The autumn wind whipped through Manhattan's streets as I adjusted my scarf higher around my neck, covering the jagged scar running from below my ear to my collarbone. Richard, my husband of 8 years, strode confidently beside me toward the exclusive pre-Fashion Week event at the plaza. His investment firm had recently backed several promising designers. "Claire, for God's sake, walk faster," Richard muttered, checking his Patek Philippe watch. "We're already 15 minutes late." I quickened my pace. Richard had been increasingly irritable since his promotion to senior partner. Our marriage had become a careful dance of avoiding his moods and maintaining appearances. The plaza's ballroom had been transformed into an avant-garde showcase space. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over New York's fashion elite as they mingled, champagne flutes in hand. "Richard, there you are," called James Thornton, the CEO of Richard's firm. "We were beginning to think you wouldn't make it." "Traffic was abysmal," Richard lied smoothly. "You remember my wife, Claire?" James nodded politely before immediately pulling Richard into a conversation. I drifted away, finding a quiet spot near the bar. 8 years ago, before my accident, I would have been in the middle of the crowd, networking for my own PR career. Now, I'd grown accustomed to being Richard's silent accessory. "White wine, please," I said to the bartender. "Claire Winters, is that you?" A familiar voice cut through the ambient noise. I turned to find Eliza Chen, my former colleague from Vogue. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw my scar. I'd left the magazine during my recovery. "Eliza, it's been ages," I said, instinctively adjusting my scarf. "Too long. I heard you were married to Richard Winters now. What else have you been up to?" Before I could answer, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. Marco Valentini, the Italian designer whose collection was the centerpiece of tonight's event, had arrived. Known for his unconventional approach to beauty, Marco commanded attention with his mere presence. "His new collection is called Transformed," Eliza whispered. "Rumor has it he's focusing on celebrating physical differences rather than hiding them." I watched as Marco worked the room. When he reached our corner, Eliza immediately introduced herself, then pulled me forward. "And this is Claire Winters, one of the most brilliant PR minds I've ever worked with at Vogue." Marco's dark eyes studied me intensely. His gaze lingered on my scarf, and I felt my hand instinctively move toward my neck. "Your husband is Richard Winters?" he asked, his Italian accent pronounced. I nodded, glancing across the room where Richard was deep in conversation. "He has been very opinionated about my collection," Marco said with a slight smile. "I look forward to changing his mind tonight." Before I could respond, Richard appeared at my side, his hand gripping my elbow firmly. "Marco, a pleasure to finally meet you in person," Richard said, his business smile firmly in place. "We're all eager to see if it lives up to the hype." "Mr. Winters, I was just getting acquainted with your wife." "Yes, Claire does enjoy these events, don't you, darling?" Richard's fingers pressed into my arm, a silent warning. Though I'm afraid fashion isn't her area of expertise anymore, I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. "The showcase will begin in 30 minutes, Marco said before moving away. Richard steered me toward a quieter corner. "What were you thinking, talking to him like that?" he hissed. "Do you know how much money the firm has invested in his collection?" "We were just making conversation, Richard." "And why is your scarf like that?" He reached up, roughly adjusting my scarf higher. "It's showing. You know how it makes people uncomfortable." The words stung, as they always did. 3 years had passed since the car accident that left me scarred, and Richard had never once made me feel that it didn't matter to him. In the elegant marble bathroom, I stood before the mirror, slowly lowering my scarf. The scar was a pale pink line, jagged in places where the glass from the windshield had cut deepest. The bathroom door opened, and Vivian Moore, the legendary editor-in-chief of Style and Substance magazine, entered. I quickly raised my scarf, but not before she had seen. "Don't," she said simply. "Never hide what makes you unique." I swallowed hard. It's easier said than done. True beauty isn't about perfection, it's about authenticity. When I returned to the ballroom, the lights had dimmed and guests were being seated for the showcase. I found Richard in our assigned front row seats, his expression tense. "You took your time," he muttered. The room fell silent as Marco took center stage. Tonight's collection, Transformed, celebrates the beauty in our journeys, our struggles, and yes, our scars, both visible and invisible. As he spoke, I felt Richard stiffen beside me. The first model appeared, a tall woman with vitiligo, her skin's natural patterns highlighted rather than concealed by Marco's design. "What is this?" Richard whispered harshly. "This isn't what we invested in." One by one, models with various physical differences walked the runway. A man with a prosthetic leg, a woman with alopecia. "This is a disaster," Richard muttered to James. "This isn't marketable, it's a freak show." His words cut through me. Was that how he saw me too? As part of a freak show? "I need some air," I whispered, standing abruptly. "Claire, sit down," Richard ordered, but I was already moving toward the exit. The hallway outside was blissfully quiet. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. 8 years of marriage, and it had come to this. Me, hiding outside events, ashamed of my own skin. "Mrs. Winters?" A soft voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to find Marco's assistant. "Mr. Valentini would like to speak with you." Confused but curious, I followed her to a room bustling with activity. Models were being fitted, makeup artists worked frantically, and Marco directed the chaos with calm authority. When he saw me, he immediately came over. "Claire, thank you for coming. I need to ask you something important." He led me to a quieter corner where several garment bags hung. "My finale piece, it's missing its model." "I don't understand," I said, glancing around. "Sophia was supposed to wear it, but she's fallen ill." He unzipped one of the bags, revealing a stunning gown in shades of silver and pale blue. This piece was designed specifically for someone with a story etched on their skin. I stepped back, suddenly understanding. "You want me to model? That's not possible. Richard would never—" "I saw how your husband spoke to you," Marco said quietly. "How he made you cover yourself. And I saw something else too. How you used to hold yourself before you started believing his words." "You don't know anything about me or my marriage," I protested weakly. "I know enough. I know that my collection is about transformation, about taking what others see as flaws and recognizing them as strengths. Your scar tells a story of survival, Claire." Before I could answer, Richard stormed in, followed by Marco's flustered assistant. "What the hell is going on here?" Richard demanded. "Claire, we're leaving, now." Marco stepped between us. "Mr. Winters, I was just asking your wife if she would consider—" "I don't care what you were asking," Richard snapped. "This entire showcase is a disaster. James is already talking about pulling our investment." As he grabbed my arm, my scarf slipped, fully exposing my scar. Richard looked at it with undisguised revulsion. "For God's sake, cover that up," he hissed. "It's disgusting." The room fell silent, everyone pretending not to hear, but I knew they had. The shame I'd carried for years suddenly crystallized into something harder. Marco stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Mr. Winters, I must ask you to leave, without your wife. She deserves better than your cruelty." Richard laughed harshly. "You think I'm cruel? I'm the only one who's been honest with her. That scar is gross. No one wants to look at it. I've spent 3 years trying to help her hide it." Every word was like a physical blow. Yet somehow, hearing him say it so baldly in front of strangers lifted a weight I hadn't known I was carrying. "Is that what you've been doing?" I asked quietly. "Helping me? Claire, be reasonable. You know how people stare. I'm protecting you." "No," I said firmly. "You're protecting yourself. You're embarrassed by me." "Don't be dramatic," he scoffed. "We can discuss this at home." I looked around at the models with their various physical differences, standing tall and proud. "I don't think I'll be coming home, Richard," I said. His face darkened. Don't be ridiculous. Where would you go? What would you do? You haven't worked in 3 years. That's not entirely accurate, came a voice from the doorway. Vivian Moore stood there, silencing even Richard. Claire was one of the most brilliant PR strategists at Vogue before her accident. I'd hire her in a heartbeat. This is between my wife and me. No, I said, finding strength in Vivian's support. I think we're done. Fine, Richard spat. Make a fool of yourself. See if I care. He stormed out. I stood frozen, the enormity of what had just happened washing over me. Claire, Marco said gently, my offer still stands. Would you consider wearing the finale piece? Not as a model, but as a woman embracing her own transformation. I looked at the beautiful gown, then at my reflection. Slowly, I removed my scarf completely. The scar was visible to everyone, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to hide it. What would I need to do? I asked. Marco smiled. Just be yourself. Walk tall. Show the world that beauty comes in many forms. The room sprang back to life. In the midst of the flurry, Vivian pulled me aside. I meant what I said. When you're ready, come see me. Talent like yours shouldn't be wasted. The finale gown fit, as if it had been made for me. Silver and pale blue fabric flowed like water, with intricate beadwork that caught the light. Instead of hiding my scar, the neckline framed it, turning it into part of the design itself. 5 minutes, called the stage manager. Marco came to stand beside me. Perfect. You are exactly what this collection needed. A real woman with a real story. I swallowed hard. I'm terrified. Good, he replied with a smile. Fear means you're about to do something brave. The backstage fell silent as the current segment ended. I could hear applause rippling through the ballroom, followed by a momentary hush as the audience anticipated what would come next. My heart hammered against my ribs, the weight of what I was about to do. Walking out in front of New York's fashion elite, my scar fully visible, felt simultaneously terrifying and liberating. Final walk in 30 seconds, the stage manager announced. Marco appeared at my side, making a small adjustment to how the fabric draped across my shoulders. Remember, Claire, he said softly, you're not just modeling a dress. You're telling your story. I nodded, unable to form words as the enormity of the moment pressed in on me. 3 years of hiding, of shrinking myself to accommodate Richard's shame, had led to this pivotal moment of defiance. And now, came the announcer's voice from the runway, the finale of Marco Valentini's transformed collection. The music changed, a haunting piano piece that seemed to build with each note. Marco squeezed my hand. That's your cue. Taking a deep breath, I stepped onto the runway. The lights were blinding at first, making it impossible to see individual faces in the audience. I focused on my breathing, on the feel of the exquisite fabric against my skin, on putting one foot in front of the other with the quiet confidence Marco had encouraged. As my eyes adjusted, the crowd came into focus. In the front row, I could see Richard's empty seat beside James, who was watching me with undisguised surprise. Next to him, Vivian Moore sat with a small, approving smile. The rest of the audience seemed to collectively hold their breath as I continued my walk. No one was laughing, no one was turning away in disgust. Instead, I felt their attention not as judgment but as recognition, of courage, of transformation, of a woman reclaiming her narrative. When I reached the end of the runway, I paused as the other models had done. The spotlight caught the beadwork of my gown, sending fragments of light dancing across the room. In that suspended moment, I reached up and gently touched my scar, acknowledging it not as a flaw, but as part of my journey. The silence broke. Someone began to applaud, then another, until the room filled with thunderous approval. As I turned to make my way back, I saw tears in the eyes of several audience members. These weren't tears of pity, but of recognition, of something authentic in a world that too often celebrated only perfection. Backstage, the energy was electric. Models and staff embraced me, their congratulations a blur of voices and faces. Marco was beaming with pride. "You were magnificent," he said, kissing both my cheeks in the European fashion. Exactly what this collection needed. Truth. Before I could respond, his assistant appeared. "Mr. Valentini, they're requesting you for the final bow." Marco turned to me. "Come with me." "What? No, I couldn't." "This collection is about transformation," he insisted. "And tonight, no one embodies that more than you." Before I could protest further, he took my hand and led me back to the runway. The applause swelled again as we appeared together. Marco bowed gracefully, then gestured to me. The spotlight found us, and in that moment, I felt a profound shift, from hiding to being seen, from shame to pride. As we exited the runway, Vivian Moore was waiting backstage. "Remarkable," she said, her eyes appraising me with new respect. "You've still got it, Claire." "Thank you," I managed, still overwhelmed by the night's turn of events. I meant what I said earlier. My office, Monday morning, 9 o'clock. She handed me her business card. "Don't be late." As Vivian departed, the backstage area began to clear. The models changed into their street clothes, makeup artists packed their kits, and the electric energy of the show gradually dissipated into the satisfied exhaustion that follows success. Marco approached with a garment bag. "For you," he said, handing it to me. "The gown. Consider it a token of my gratitude." "Marco, I couldn't possibly—" "Please," he insisted. "It was made for you. And after tonight, I cannot imagine anyone else wearing it." I accepted the bag, touched by his generosity. "Thank you for everything." "No, Claire. Thank you for reminding us all what fashion should be about. Not hiding, but celebrating who we truly are." A commotion at the backstage entrance interrupted our conversation. Richard pushed past security, his face flushed with anger and something else. Embarrassment. "What the hell was that?" he demanded, striding toward us. "Do you have any idea how humiliating—" "Mr. Winters," Marco interjected coolly, "I believe I asked you to leave earlier." Richard ignored him, focusing his rage on me. "You made a spectacle of yourself, of us. James is furious." "Actually," came James's voice as he approached from behind Richard, "I was just telling Marco that his collection was brilliant. Unexpected, yes, but precisely the kind of forward-thinking our firm wants to be associated with." He turned to me with a respectful nod. "And your wife's participation was particularly moving." Richard's face contorted with confusion. "But you said—" "I said it wasn't what we expected," James clarified. "But sometimes, Richard, the unexpected is exactly what this industry needs." He checked his watch. "The after-party at the Standard begins in an hour. I expect to see you both there, Marco." After James left, Richard's demeanor shifted instantly. "Well," he said with a forced laugh, "that was certainly a surprise. We should get going, Claire. We'll need to change before the after-party." I stared at him, incredulous. After everything that had transpired, he expected us to simply fall back into our roles, the successful investor and his obedient, scarred wife, who now had temporary value because someone important had approved. "No, Richard," I said quietly but firmly. "What do you mean, no? James clearly expects us to—" "I'm not going anywhere with you," I clarified. "Not tonight, not ever again." His expression hardened. "Don't be ridiculous. Where will you go? What will you do?" The questions that had once terrified me now seemed trivial. "I'll figure it out. I always do." "You need me, Claire," he insisted, lowering his voice to a hiss. 3 years out of the industry. No contacts, no recent experience. One runway walk doesn't change that. "Actually, it does," I replied, surprising myself with my calm certainty. "It changes everything. Because for the first time since the accident, I remembered who I am without your constant reminder of who you think I should be." Marco, who had been watching our exchange with quiet concern, stepped forward. "Claire, my car is waiting whenever you're ready. I can have the driver take you anywhere you need to go." Richard's face reddened. "Stay out of this. She's my wife." "No," I said, the word resonating with finality. "I'm not anymore." As if to punctuate my declaration, I reached into my purse and removed my wedding ring, placing it in Richard's palm. His fingers closed around it automatically, his expression a mixture of shock and dawning realization that he was losing control. "You'll regret this," he warned, his voice low. "When the novelty wears off, when they've moved on to the next sensation, you'll come crawling back." I smiled, feeling a strange sense of peace. "Goodbye, Richard." He stood frozen for a moment, seemingly waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, he turned and stormed out, the backstage door slamming behind him. "Are you all right?" Marco asked gently. I nodded, surprised to find that I truly was. "Yes, for the first time in a long time." "Where would you like the driver to take you?" I considered this. I couldn't go home, or what had been home. Not tonight. Possibly not ever again. "The Plaza," I decided. "I'll get a room there tonight and figure out the rest tomorrow." Marco nodded approvingly. A new beginning deserves a proper setting. The Plaza's luxurious suite was a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil of the evening. I stood by the window, gazing out at the twinkling lights of Central Park. New York at night had always calmed me. The city's perpetual motion, a reminder that life continued regardless of personal upheavals. After Marco's driver had dropped me off, I checked in with nothing but my purse and the garment bag containing the silver-blue gown. The concierge, recognizing me from earlier in the evening, had arranged for toiletries and basic necessities to be sent up. I'd called Eliza, briefly explaining what had happened, and she promised to meet me for breakfast. My phone had been buzzing incessantly, Richard, alternating between anger and conciliatory messages. I finally silenced it, placing it face down on the nightstand. Whatever came next, I needed this night to myself to process the seismic shift that had occurred in just a few hours. A soft knock at the door startled me. It was too late for housekeeping, and I hadn't ordered room service. Cautiously, I approached the door and looked through the peephole, relieved to see Eliza's familiar face. "I know I said breakfast," she explained when I opened the door, "but I figured you might need this sooner." She held up a small overnight bag. "Pajamas, a change of clothes, and the essentials." "You're a lifesaver," I said, hugging her tightly. She stepped inside, whistling at the opulent suite. "Nice choice." "Richard's credit card?" "Mine, actually," I replied. "I've maintained my own accounts. Richard never knew." Eliza grinned. "Smart woman, always have an escape plan." We settled on the plush sofa, and Eliza produced a bottle of champagne she'd brought. "This calls for a celebration. Liberation deserves proper acknowledgement." As we sipped from hotel tumblers, I recounted the full story. Marco's offer, Richard's cruelty, and my sudden, irreversible decision. "I saw you on the runway," Eliza said. "Everyone did. You were magnificent, Claire. Not because of the dress, though it was stunning. Because of how you carried yourself, like you'd finally remembered who you are." "I had," I admitted. "For 3 years, I've been living as a fraction of myself. Tonight, I remembered what it felt like to be whole." "So what's next?" "Vivian's offer sounds promising." I nodded, considering. "It is, but I'm not sure if I want to go back to what I was doing before. The accident changed me, not just physically. Maybe it's time for something new." "Like what?" "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "But for the first time, I'm excited to find out." We talked late into the night, reminiscing about our days at Vogue, catching up on the 3 years we'd been apart. Eliza had started her own digital marketing agency, focusing on emerging designers, including, as it turned out, Marco Valentini. "It wasn't a coincidence that I was there tonight," she confessed. "Marco asked me to consult on the digital campaign for Transformed. When I saw your name on the guest list, I made sure to attend." "You knew Richard would be there." "I knew of him," she clarified. "His firm's investment in Marco's work has been industry news. I didn't know he was your husband until I saw you tonight." Morning came with soft golden light filtering through the suite's windows. After Eliza left, promising to return later, I ordered breakfast and opened my laptop. First, I transferred funds to cover several months of living expenses to my personal account. Then I began the practical tasks of separation, cancelling joint credit cards, researching divorce attorneys, making a list of possessions I would need from the penthouse. At 9, my phone rang. Vivian Moore, precisely on schedule. "I know we said Monday," she began without preamble, "but there's been a development. How quickly can you get to my office?" 2 hours later, I sat across from Vivian in her sleek corner office at Style and Substance magazine. The Manhattan skyline stretched behind her, a fitting backdrop for a woman who had helped shape the fashion industry for decades. "Marco's show has created quite the buzz," she said, sliding a tablet across the desk. On it was an image of me on the runway, the silver-blue gown catching the light, my scar visible and unashamed. The headline read, "Transformed, Fashion's New Authenticity." "The industry is calling it a watershed moment," Vivian continued. "And you, Claire, are at the center of it." I stared at the image, barely recognizing myself in the confident woman captured there. It was just one walk. It was more than that, and you know it. Vivian leaned forward. "I'm offering you a position as our new Director of Special Projects. We're launching a series on redefining beauty standards in the fashion industry, and I want you to spearhead it." The offer was unexpected and perfect, a chance to use my PR experience for something meaningful, something that resonated with my own journey. "Can I think about it?" I asked. Vivian nodded. "Take the weekend, but know this. What happened last night wasn't the end of something, Claire. It was the beginning." As I left Vivian's office, my phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. It was Marco. "Brunch. I have a proposition." And at a quiet cafe in the West Village, Marco explained his idea, a documentary following the creation of his next collection, with me as both consultant and subject. "Last night was just the beginning," he said, echoing Vivian's words. "The story of transformation deserves to be told fully." "I'm not sure I'm ready to be that public," I admitted. "Consider it," he urged. "Not for me, not for the collection, but for every person who has ever felt they needed to hide some part of themselves." That evening, as I returned to the plaza, I found Richard waiting in the lobby. He looked haggard, his usual impeccable appearance slightly disheveled. "Claire," he began, rising from his seat, "please just hear me out." I sighed, gesturing to a quiet corner where we could talk privately. "5 minutes, Richard." "I was wrong," he said immediately. "What I said about your scar, it was cruel and untrue. I was projecting my own insecurities, my fear of how others might perceive us." "Us?" I repeated, "or you?" He had the grace to look ashamed. "Both, I suppose. But Claire, we can work through this. 8 years of marriage shouldn't end over one bad night." "It wasn't one night," I said quietly. "It was 3 years of subtle cruelty, of making me feel less than. Last night was just when I finally heard what you've been saying all along. People are talking about you," he said, changing tactics. "About us. The firm's investors are asking questions. And that's not my problem anymore, Richard." He reached for my hand, which I carefully withdrew. "What about the penthouse, our life together? You'd throw it all away." Looking at him now, I felt not anger, but pity. Richard had always measured worth by external validation, wealth, status, appearances. He couldn't understand that in walking away from him, I was walking towards something far more valuable, myself. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours," I said gently. "Goodbye, Richard." As he watched me walk toward the elevator, I could feel the weight of his gaze. Confused, perhaps angry, certainly disbelieving. The Richard I had known couldn't comprehend choosing authenticity over security, truth over pretense. In my suite, I stood before the mirror, really looking at myself, perhaps for the first time in years. The scar that curved along my neck was part of me, neither beautiful nor ugly, simply present. Like the lines beginning to form at the corners of my eyes, the slight silver threading through my dark hair, it told the story of my life, of survival and resilience. I opened my laptop and began to write. An email to Vivian accepting her offer, a note to Marco agreeing to his documentary proposal, and finally a message to myself, a promise of the life I intended to build. The city lights twinkled beyond my window, a constellation of possibilities. Tomorrow would bring challenges, finding an apartment, negotiating the divorce, stepping back into a career I'd abandoned. But for the first time in years, I faced the future not with fear, but with anticipation. The scar that Richard had called gross had become my liberation, a visible reminder that healing doesn't mean erasing all evidence of pain, but incorporating it into a new wholeness. In a single night, I had been transformed, not by Marco's beautiful gown, but by the simple, revolutionary act of refusing to hide any longer. As I closed my laptop, I caught my reflection once more. Head high, shoulders back, scar visible and unashamed. "Hello, Claire," I whispered to the woman in the mirror. "Welcome back."